Alright, bonjour à tous, Battosay here, and today we have a special guest, FlowerChild. So,
hello,
thanks for joining me.
Hey, how's it going, dude?
I'm fine, thanks, and you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Glad to be done with that release last night.
Okay, so, well, let's shoot it. So, I just have 4 questions for you, and
Yep.
maybe we should start by a quick reminder of what's the Forge.
Okay, well, the Forge was and is intended to be a common API for mod developers to use. So an API is basically just a system of communicating with Minecraft itself so that we can each modify aspects of the game without our mods conflicting with each other. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a rather simple idea that obviously gets more complicated in execution.
Okay. And so, next question would be, why are you pulling out from the Forge and not using it?
Yeah, which is obviously a key point right now, and it's upsetting a lot of people. I mainly joined on to the Forge, to make everybody's life easier, and I was a strong advocate of it at the beginning, in terms of encouraging other modders to climb on board and trying to explain to people why it was actually a good thing for the community. Unfortunately, though, with time, that led to a lot of conflict internally, in the team. I probably started, getting into arguments within maybe the first week of joining on with the thing because it was readily apparent that, members had different visions of what this thing should actually do. As far as I was concerned, we should basically be doing the same things that we were doing as individual modders, trying to minimize the number of base classes that we were modifying, trying to keep the API small while providing the functionality that was desired by everybody, but basically doing so in moderation, right? Because the thing is, the larger something like this becomes, the more difficult it is to maintain. And with each update that you put out or that, comes out for Minecraft, the more and more time it's going to take to update the API itself, to the new version. So I was pretty much always advocating, some restraint in terms of the amount of base classes that would be modified along the way. So I remember one of the first arguments that came up maybe within the first week was with regards to a hook that was to be put in for red power functionality. And that had to do with being able to stick stuff to the sides of cover plates. So, you're talking about torches and all this kind of thing. Now, the problem with something like this was that it becomes highly invasive. And I've talked a bit about it on the forums. But just for that change alone, there's something like 13 base classes that are modified, and it's not just a line or two of code for each of them. It's pretty extensive. It's spread out, and like I said, it's the kind of thing that just becomes a huge pain in the ass to maintain with time. So that was probably one of the first, the first issues that I started developing with the Forge, and I kept it quiet for a long time. Actually, this has been going on for months now. But the thing was, I thought it very important for the good of the API to to present a united front to the community. I didn't want any kind of internal dissent, to start making people hesitate to get involved or what have you, or, to start causing issues, outside of the development team itself. So for the most part, I just kept it quiet. Now, the thing is, with time though, this started, eating at me, in the long run, because I saw that the code base was becoming larger and larger. I didn't even want to bother, trying to understand everything that was going into the API. It was slowing down in its update cycle, and it was beginning to annoy me that basically the mod was becoming more and more dependent. My work was becoming more and more dependent on what the Forge was doing. And meanwhile, it was going down a path that I wasn't at all comfortable with. In combination with that, it's been made pretty clear on the on the forums that, I have a personality conflict with LRM, and considering that she's probably the primary developer of that thing, and it reached the point where I wasn't even comfortable talking to her anymore about like hooks that I wanted to include and that kind of thing. It just wasn't a comfortable situation. It was basically I was in a situation where I was, the mod was becoming reliant on somebody that I just didn't get along with. And most of that conflict basically boils down to, what pretty much everybody has seen at this point is that, there are a lot of, or the other major tech mods, that are in the Forge, whether that be Buildcraft, Industrial Craft, or my own, functionality from those are slowly showing up, within Red Power in a way that I find like highly competitive and uncomfortable. Like at that point, LRAM stops becoming somebody that I'm collaborating with, for common good and starts becoming a competitor. So, just at that level, the thought of, being in a collaborative effort with somebody that I'm in active competition with, it's just not comfortable. Like I'm making the mod for fun. So, I don't always want to have to be worrying about what somebody else is doing or, how their changes to the API are going to affect my mod or what have you. Like I'd much rather just be focused on, having fun and making my own mod and, sharing it with, people that I get along with in the community. So yeah, I think that, basically explains the overall situation.
Yeah, it explained it quite well, actually. Thanks for that.
All right. Cool.
Okay, let's move to the next question.
Yep.
Which is, what does it mean for compatibility issues?
Well, in terms of me dropping the Forge, like, it sucks horribly. I'm certainly not happy with having to go this route. I'm always very careful not to screw up people's worlds. It's one of the reasons I don't modify world generation at all. Like, I don't want to mess with people's save games. Even within the context of Forge development, like I was one of the greatest opponents, against any kind of extended block ID solution for that very reason, because I knew like it would mess people's save games up, if not now, then in the future. So I'm always very careful when I'm putting in new features to try and make sure that, it doesn't mess with people's worlds. And it was one of the hardest parts about making this decision with regards to the Forge, because like I was uncomfortable for, to the point where I just wanted to quit, for probably between a month and 2 now, and again was just keeping it quiet. But with each new release that went by, like I was getting more and more uncomfortable. With each new feature that I saw in Red Power, I was getting more and more uncomfortable. So, it was just creating a situation where it was draining away the fun, of me making my own mod. And, really that's the only thing that drives me. Like I'm not, making any money off it or anything like that. So, the point at which I stop having fun, for an extended period of time, like, is the point at which the development of the mod just ends. Like, Better Than Wolves ceases to exist. So, in terms of compatibility, it tosses it out the window. And, the thing I'm most apologetic for in that is the potential damage that does to people's save games, because that acts like completely contrary to my normal development policy. Like I'm probably one of the most careful about that kind of thing. So yeah, that, obviously worlds created that were running before with Buildcraft, with Industrial Craft, you can still obviously go back and play them in 1.8, but you're not really going to be able to easily bring them forward into 1.0 unless you manually start deleting blocks and items within your world to try to create something that works now. So yeah, definitely my apologies go out to the community for that aspect in particular. So really, yeah, in terms of the other Forge mods, compatibility at present is just completely broken. I would highly doubt that people are going to easily be able to get Better Than Wolves running with any of them. In terms of compatibility with mods that aren't using the Forge, it's it's definitely more likely that that's going to work. But because of the number of base class changes that I have to make, I can't make any promises. Like people are welcome to try. But as I state in the README now, I'm just not supporting compatibility. Like I can't effectively do it at this point, cause there are so many mods out there and Better Than Wolves has grown so large, that I'm basically put in the position of either adding new features that I want to make the mod better or supporting compatibility. And worrying about compatibility all the time, like, really holds me back in terms of development. And without access now to a common API, that can contain those hooks, there's just not anything I can effectively do, while still continuing to, expand upon Better Than Wolves. And like I said, still have fun in the process. So yeah, basically in terms of compatibility, all bets are off at this point.
Okay, so but that
Yep.
that means that it's probably a good time now to start a brand new world and use only Better Than Wolves, because a lot of us actually believe that it's more of a standalone mod. Do you agree on that?
Yeah. Well, it's, I've said it many times in the past, like, I probably didn't intend it when I first started out, like, when we go back to when I first started Better Than Wolves, like, I had 6 blocks planned for it and that was it. And then with time, it just slowly started to mutate into, what we have now, where, there's an overall tech tree to the thing. There's all kinds of different blocks. There's a lot of auxiliary features that hold it all together. So yeah, it really is like one of the big contrasts that, you see when playing it in combination with other tech mods, is that I tend to focus a lot, on trying to preserve the vanilla feel. Like I was describing it to a friend recently in terms of like, the way I see Better Than Wolves is kind of like, okay, if the game creator spent, an extra year or so developing the thing and adding in features, and he went slightly insane in the process and started adding stuff like companion cubes in the gimp suit, then you'd end up with something like Better Than Wolves. Like I really do try to stay true to vanilla Minecraft, integrate the features properly with it, like retain the overall feel of the thing. But at the same time, like there is an element of wackiness that, comes out of my own personality, that I largely add in for humor, So yeah, the thing is though, is while I'm in the process of doing that, like I'm constantly trying to, make sure that, like, say for example, all the devices used for automation, like the hopper, aren't overpowered and don't feel out of place relative to, the stuff that's already in vanilla. So like the example I always use is like the hopper filters, like it would have taken me, if I would have went the easy route, it would have taken me about 10 minutes to put in like a universal filter for the hoppers where it's like, okay, say for example, you put a piece of string in as the filter while only string goes through. That would have been super simple to do. Like, you're just checking, okay, is this string? Go ahead. It's not string. Okay, don't. Whereas the approach that I took instead was to come up with a whole bunch of like different physical filters, like, okay, the wicker, the grates, the rollers, all that kind of stuff. And then I basically had to go through like every block and item in the game, like one by hand, and assign them like a size and a shape. Okay, does it pass through this kind of filter? Does it not? Everything from iron ingots, to blocks of sand to whatever, it was like one by one I had to go through that. So a 10-minute job, or something that I could have done in 10 minutes, but it took me hours and hours to do. And then every time something new goes into the game, like, I have to assign it those same kind of properties. So obviously a lot more work to do it that way. And it's less powerful, right? Which, seems weird, but at the same time, like, I think, creates a much better sense of immersion. And there's a lot of little things like that in the mod where it's like, okay, I could have done things the easy way, but instead, I decided to make it harder for the player, more challenging, and, ultimately more immersive in the long run. Now, one of the things that tends to clash when you install Better Than Wolves with other tech mods is exactly that, is that practically every tech mod out there gives you more powerful ways of doing things. So what ends up happening is there's very little reason to use, the stuff that's in Better Than Wolves. And what I find ends up happening is that people tend to use it for decorative stuff like the windmills or the water wheels or whatever. And that really isn't the intention of the mod. Like, there's a lot of really interesting stuff or a lot of interesting systems within Better Than Wolves that don't end up getting used as a result, because they're being played alongside other mods. And I certainly have no objections to other mods, but at the same time, I think inevitably the players end up losing out on the experience, because there is a kind of a distinct gameplay design methodology behind Better Than Wolves that really isn't apparent when you start combining it with other mods that offer you more powerful solutions to problems. So, yeah, all in all, I really do think it is best to be played alone. And in that sense, whereas I'm really sad to be losing the compatibility with other mods, I'm hoping that it at least does encourage a few more people to give it a try, all by itself and see what it's really about. Because I do think a lot of people are kind of missing out on a lot of aspects of the mod as a result of that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely agree on that.
Cool.
And that's what you can use to say that Better Than Wolves in such a great mod, because you take so much care of doing things the hard way, but that make us having more fun.
Well, I hope so. It's definitely not for everybody, man. And, I don't know how many mods are out there that really, put so much effort into making things harder for the player, and it's not for everybody. Some people install mods, really just to make certain aspects of vanilla Minecraft easier to play, and if that's the case, then, Better Than Wolves isn't really, for that kind of player, I'm the kind of guy that, ultimately it's made for me, it's what I enjoy playing, and I enjoy using stuff like water flow for item transport, whereas a lot of people don't want to be bothered with it, so in terms of, any kind of automated collection or whatever, I designed a system that would fit right into, the vanilla item transport system right off the bat, in terms of other things too, there's a lot of stuff I like in vanilla, like mob traps and that kind of stuff, so I always avoid doing stuff that'll nerf mob traps because I think it's cool to build them and, I don't want to wreck them for other players, by giving them an easier solution, to collecting stuff than building a mob trap, So, yeah, it's not for everybody, but I never really intended it to be either, I was just making something that I wanted to play with in my own world. And, I was happy to find out that there are other like-minded people, like yourself that really dig that approach, and really enjoy the challenge of setting up convoluted, automated systems, the stuff like the soul urns and all that I've been building in recent releases. That stuff has nothing to do with automating vanilla aspects of vanilla Minecraft. It has everything to do with providing new automation challenges, new puzzles for the player to solve. But at the same time, you have to like that kind of puzzle aspect to gameplay. There's a much easier ways to do the same things that I'm doing in this mod. So yeah, I do hope that a few more people give it a try on its own, as I keep saying, I don't want the thing to be super popular, or I'm not really concerned if it is, either way. But I do like it when people, really dig the kind of gameplay that I'm providing and get a lot of enjoyment out of it, At that point, I certainly do feel, a lot of camaraderie with those guys, and, I do try to help them as much as I can, in enjoying the mod. So yeah, that's the story, man.
I think we can conclude on that. Otherwise, it's probably gonna be a bit too long.
Oh, no problem, man. No problem. So yeah, thanks for talking to me about all that, man.
Yeah, thanks to you, man, for doing
that. All right. Cheerio.